Hi, I'm Robbie Rogers of the LA Galaxy, and you're watching Behind the Brand.
Hi, I'm Bryan Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with pro athlete and author Robbie Rogers. Robbie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, talk to us about your story. How did you get here? You know, everyone knows you probably from the Galaxy and...
Yeah, I mean, I started playing professional soccer when I was 18, 19, after a year at University of Maryland. And I don't know, I've just always been a fan of soccer. You know, I remember watching the first World Cup in the United States in '94. It was a Colombia-US game, the Rose Bowl, and that kind of sparked my interest in being a soccer player. I think I was 7 or 8 years old. And I think from that moment I thought, like, you know, I want to be in the World Cup one day. So I started to take those steps, and I kind of had those role models and eventually, you know, found my place in professional sports.
Talk to us about what it's like to play in a professional league. You know, a lot of people watch this show. They're entrepreneurs. They've got a startup. And I think there's a great metaphor, you know, with sports and business, you know. Both have their difficult moments, you know.
Yeah.
Both, there's a lot of rejection. There's, you know, sometimes a lot of blood and sweat, you know. Talk to us about what it's like to play professional ball.
I think, like in any business, and if you want to be good at anything, there's a lot of sacrifice, and that was extremely difficult for me when I was younger. You know, you had to give up your weekends, a lot of your nights. You know, you go to training every day, and you sacrifice so much. So for me, I loved it so much, so it didn't feel like that. You know, I wanted to be successful. I didn't feel like I was giving up, you know, going to school dances, or you know, when I had to live in Florida, I didn't feel like I was giving up my high school experience. So I just absolutely loved it, and I did everything in my power to become a professional athlete. You know, I would train extra. I would, you know, watch soccer on TV. You know, summer breaks would go over to Europe and train with teams, and I was really lucky and blessed to have people around me that really helped me. Great coaches, and my family was very supportive. But you know, I think with professional sports, and I think why a lot of men and women in professional sports are so successful in businesses after their career in sports, is because of that drive and passion to be successful and to, you know, sacrifice things, like I said earlier. And also there's just a drive to be good at things. You know, very competitive. So that's one of the things that drives me to do things outside of sports.
Yeah, so where does that drive come from? Is it something you're born with, or can it be learned?
I think it can be learned. For me, it definitely was born with it. I'm from a family of 5 kids, so I was competing with everyone in my family for attention and for all of that stuff.
The last hamburger.
Exactly. You know, you have to eat 3 hamburgers before your brother finishes his first one.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think from a very young age, and if you ask anyone in my family, I was a very competitive person. But I think you can learn that. I think if you want to be successful in anything, you have to be competitive. You know, you have to be driven, and again, it goes back to sacrificing things. So, yeah, I was lucky to kind of be raised that way. But I'm sure, you know, it's something that you can learn.
So how do you learn it then? I mean, how do people ask you, you know, how did you get this level of success? How did you make it? You know, younger kids probably are looking at you as their idol and trying to model what you're doing. Like, what advice do you give them?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing is to find something that you're passionate about. You know, find something you're passionate about, and then to create a plan, you know, how you're going to get there, how you're going to get to that goal. And I think when you create those little steps, you become almost competitive, just naturally become competitive. You want to get to that next step and get to the next step and eventually find yourself at your goal. So now it's a little different. I know for me, when I was younger, I was like, all right, I want to get to the U17 national team. I want to get to U18 and to the U20 World Cup. It's
so you set milestones.
Yeah, I set milestones, set little goals like that. And
were they little by little, or did you set like the end goal? Like, I definitely want to make the national team. That's the peak of the mountain, but I know I need to take...
Well, I watched those guys, you know, when I told you I moved to Florida to play in residency, and I watched those guys. So I watched Landon Donovan and DeMarcus Beasley and those guys play, and they'd come train. So I always said, like, one day I want to be at that level. Yeah. And even when I watched the World Cup when I was younger, you know, I wanted to be at that level. But I was very much in the moment of, okay, I need to make the U17 World Cup, and you know, I need to turn pro. So I don't know why, but when I was probably like 16 or 17, I was like, I need to turn pro while I'm a teenager. I don't know why I thought this, but I was like, I need to do it. So I turned pro actually when I was, I think like just when I was turning 19, when I moved to Holland to play for Heerenveen.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I like set that goal, and I had that intention, and I just like willed myself, and I found myself playing in Europe.
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent message. And it's subtle because I want to underscore it a little bit. It's like, it sounds like you had the end goal in mind. You didn't mind doing those little steps in between the benchmark, but you were so determined to knock those out, like
Yeah.
cross it off your list or get there at any cost, that you just kept your eyes on the prize.
Yeah, I honestly believe that when you want something so badly, I feel like the universe like helps, and you work hard. I feel like the universe like helps you get to it, and I know that was the case for me in a lot of different points in my life. And going to Europe and then playing in England, I was like, yeah, I want to play in England at some point in my career.
Well,
So,
you also painted yourself into, you gave yourself a deadline.
yeah,
You said, before I'm not a teenager, or
Yeah.
while I'm a
Just like a
teenager, I
weird
want to go
one.
pro. But, I think that's an important lesson perhaps we can pull from this is you have to stretch yourself or push yourself and create those specific, next Tuesday I will ship this or else.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I do that at the beginning of every year, and I'm sure a lot of people do, and it's kind of cheesy, but last year I remember was talking to my ex-boyfriend, and we spoke about like what kind of stuff do I want to do with the Galaxy this year, and definitely a championship was one of those things.
More playing time, please.
Yeah, exactly, and
Kills
so
me.
I
You
kind
gotta
of
sit on the bench.
reinvent myself, and so there were things that was like, okay, that's a huge goal, and the way that the season ended the year before, it was not that likely, but our team and I think myself being part of it, we kind of just willed our way to it, and there was so many different obstacles we had to overcome, but just to kind of put that on the universe and to have that goal, I don't know, it really helped me. And at the end of the year, I saw like, okay, and I was looking at my goals and I was like, wow, like it was pretty amazing. I, sold the show and the championship and really reinvented myself in the field and a number of different things. So
I have a question. So how do you get people on board who you want to be on board? Because you need your team.
Yeah.
I mean, you play team sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with yourself. You show up every day. I show up early every day, and I go in and lift weights, and just I'm a professional. I think your actions speak louder than words, and I'm the kind of guy that on the field, of course, sometimes you'll hear me, get angry, but I'd rather be the guy running and doing fitness and working my butt off and kind of leading that way.
Yeah.
So. The guys buy into that. When you're in a locker room and you're talking, or at least for me, I turn away from that kind of stuff. So if you're working hard and your captain's the guys that are, good guys that are leading, but also, the first guys there and the last guys to leave, your team buys into that.
Yeah.
And our team, we became like a family this year. And it took a while, but at the end of the season, there was no chance that we were going to lose, the championship game.
Are there some that still don't quite catch the vision and they end up on the fringes? I mean, it sounds like remember that football movie, Rudy? Yeah. You're like Rudy, like working his guts out, trying his very best. Are there people that you have to sort of drag, on board? And I ask that because, if you're running a company or organization, and especially if you're at the top, you're somewhat privileged, right? And author Seth Godin talks about, chefs, cooks, and bottle washers, The chefs are in charge. The bottle washers are disrespected.
Yeah.
So in your industry, it's the guys that are lower on the totem pole, younger, maybe sitting on the bench. Or maybe it's the older players that are jaded and, they're just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah.
How do you get people on board besides, just sheer, I'm going to show you by example? Like,
well, first off, in sports, there's such a fine line, and if you have a number of those guys, you're not going to succeed, and you're not going to win a championship.
Or do they get weeded out? Do they get traded? Or?
Yeah, they'll get weeded out, but it's not usually that season. It takes, you wait to the off season, you trade guys, you sell guys, or guys just don't get their contracts picked up.
Do they get shunned by the team? It's like, hey, guy's not...
No, in sports, or at least in my sport, guys are really professional, and if it's happening a lot, definitely the captains will go speak with them. But I've never been on a championship team that has... a large number of those guys, and maybe some of the younger guys that don't really know how to be a pro yet, and you expect that sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's when you kind of bring them along, but in a very sensitive way, and you talk to them about your experiences and when you were a rookie and having to carry the balls out, or when you're traveling to do the bags and stuff like that. But again, I'm a person that of course I like to share my experiences, and that's the way I teach kind of. So when I was coming out, people have asked me like, oh, how did you come out and then go back into sports? And I never try to give people advice, but I'll just talk to them about my experience. So I do the same in sports. With the older guys, the veteran guys, if you have a large number of those guys, you're not going to win a championship. And that's up to the coach. The coach is the one that builds the locker room and that builds the mentality. And when you have guys like that, you're just not going to be successful. So anytime I've been on a team like that, it's extremely difficult, especially because now I'm starting to become one of the veterans. I'm 27, and I know in sports it's like starting to get old. But as a young guy, when we had older guys like that, it was tough for me, and I would just work. I would just continue to work and try to contribute more on the field. But you're not going to be successful. So that's when it's up to the coaches and the captains to kind of speak to those guys. And so I guess if you're running a business, those are difficult conversations that you'll have to have. But I'm not at that point in my life yet.
Well, it sounds like another good message is empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people have either scold them, try to get them out, but it sounds like you handle leadership with empathy too. Like, I was there once, I carried the balls, I paid my dues.
Yeah, and I remember my rookie year, it was difficult. I was lucky because I was preparing for U20 World Cup, so I had that goal to, get to and to try to win a World Cup for the U.S. at the Olympics in Canada, the World Cup in Canada. So it was a little different for me, but I remember having to carry balls and having to stay after, and if we didn't stay after, the coaches saying stuff just like, why aren't you guys staying after training? You guys are, 19, 20 years old, you should be training more.
Yeah.
So I remember that stuff. Yeah, I remember that stuff, and I remember being annoyed sometimes, like, well, I can't walk, my legs are dead. I'm so sore. Yeah. But so I just try to, like you said, just be sensitive and empathize with what how they're feeling and what they're going through, and joke with them as well, because no one wants to just always be criticized, I don't think.
I think empathy is huge, and maybe it's a trait that's very much underrated and appreciated. Talk a little bit about empathy. For those who haven't heard your story about coming out, you've got the new book. I want to talk about that in a little bit, but talk about the time leading up to that. Yeah. Sort of the time when you maybe thought all was lost. Yeah. And then how it completely changed directions.
Yeah, so I have such like a love-hate relationship with sports because, I grew up always wanting to be a professional athlete, but when I was 14, 15, I realized I was gay, and I didn't have any role models to look up to. I didn't have anyone to kind of mold my career after. I, thought that it wasn't possible to be gay and to be a professional athlete. So I really struggled with it and was very isolated and depressed. And even when I went to University of Maryland and then went over to Holland.
And nobody knew?
Nobody knew. No,
not even your parents?
No, not even no one knew, especially not my parents. But I was just struggling, and it was a way that I had to deal with it. I struggled with myself and had to kind of come to terms with myself before I could tell anyone else. But there was definitely points in my life where I was just so alone and depressed, and people thought, oh, he's a professional athlete, he's going to the Olympics, he's doing this kind of stuff, he should be so happy. But I realized that, through those accomplishments, because I thought that would kind of mask, my depression and my isolation.
What did it feel like, though? You felt completely alone, like unsupported, or?
It felt like I was just completely alone. It felt like no one in the world really knows who I am. And if they did, then I probably wouldn't have any kind of support. I felt like I got love and attention from being a successful athlete. So it was really difficult. And
so did you sort of, it almost sounds like you sort of pre-sabotaged it. Like you made it fail before anyone else made it fail because maybe you were afraid.
Yeah, it's
talk about that a little bit.
It's the amount of things that you hear from your family, from things in the locker room, in stadiums, from commentators about like homophobic things. Like I'd be in a locker room and someone would say, guys, we'd be riding the bike after a game and people would have a discussion of how could someone even be gay? How could a guy go through the act of loving another man? How disgusting is that? And I'd be sitting over there riding the bike, hearing this kind of stuff, thinking, well, I am never going to come out while I'm playing professional soccer.
And are you even sure that they weren't gay?
No. Those are the same guys that sent me messages and texted me after I came out and were like, oh, Robbie, I loved having you as a teammate and respect you so much. So,
so it's just a lack of understanding.
Lack of understanding, yeah. It's
or insensitivity.
Insensitivity. It's the locker mentality where guys say things they think other people want to hear. They say things that fit a stereotype of what a professional athlete is, which, professional athletes are also different from different religions, and there's a number of gay guys out there that are closeted. And
so are you officially the first professional athlete to come out?
No. There's been a few guys in the past that, I know there's a baseball player, there's Glenn Bergen, he played for the A's and the Dodgers maybe, and a few other clubs. I could have that name wrong, so don't quote me, but he was kind of out and reporters just wouldn't write about it. And he would talk about it, but people wouldn't write about it.
So it was maybe not when it was relevant or...
or just when it was just so taboo that if they knew they wrote about it, that they'd probably lose their jobs and that there would be a huge uproar. Yeah. So, there's female athletes that have come out, Abby Wambach, Megan Rapinoe, there was a boxer, I forgot his name, but you know, in I guess modern sports, it's myself, Jason Collins, and Michael Sam. So it's crazy that things haven't changed more quickly, and that, you know, after seeing the experience that we've had, and I've become friends with both those guys. It's strange that more people haven't kind of taken that step, but then it reminds me of the culture that I was in before I came out, and the things that I heard, and the mentality that guys have towards gay men and women.
You got to a point where you just said, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And what was that about?
I moved to England, and I moved to England. It was one of my goals. It was one of my dreams to play in England, and at that point I played like 20 times for the national team and went to Olympics and won different championships, and I realized I wasn't happy, and I was like, well, none of this stuff is making me happy, so like, what kind of change do I need to make? And I was raised, and I believed at that time that I was a person that if something was really bothering me that much and I was so depressed, and I didn't want to be one of those people that was always thinking about, always constantly nagging myself. I didn't want to be a person that then didn't make a change. Yeah. So let's say I was at I was at a club and it was an awful situation with a coach. I didn't want to be there 2-3 years and always be complaining about it to myself and to my agent. I would be like, okay, well, how am I gonna fix this?
Get it out into the open.
Exactly. I need to change this. I need to be in a positive environment. I need to move forward. And so it took 25 years, but it got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to make a change. And if this means I need to step away from the sport that I grew up loving and sacrificed so much for, then that's what I need to do. So I made a plan, and that's what I did.
And then what happened?
Came out to my family first, and I'm from a very conservative Catholic family, and they were very supportive. You know, I told you earlier, but my mom, you know, she was so supportive. She brought me to tears, and it's really the only time that I've really cried during this whole thing, except when I watched that Alan Turing movie, Imitation Games. I was pretty sad with that. But everyone supported me, and I told you, like, the same people that I heard the most ridiculous homophobic things from were the same people that called me and supported me, and it was a lesson that I learned. You know, you have to give people really a chance to get to know you and to love you and to kind of surprise you, and it was those people that really supported me that got me back into soccer.
What does your mom mean to you? I mean, how has she influenced your life? And
talk
about your relationship a little bit.
Yeah, my mom, you know, my mom and my dad, but my mom especially, I have a special bond with her, and I think everyone in my family would kind of say that I was a mama's boy, which is true. I was there the other day. My mom had shoulder surgery, so I went down and stayed in Huntington Beach a few days and just, like, you know, cooked meals for her and took care of her. But she is a very strong woman. She's a lawyer, but she, you know, with my dad, raised 5 kids, and I don't know. She's just a very strong individual that supported me, and you know, with my dad driving me to training and take me when we'd have to fly to Philadelphia for soccer tournaments, and then would make sure every day that you know, all 5 of her kids were, you know, getting their homework done and all that stuff. So I'm sure there's a lot of moms out there that are like that and really struggle and have to go through a lot to raise 5 kids. But for me, I just felt like she was the best mom in the world that always supported me. And when I came out, I thought it was so difficult for me to come out to her, and she was one of the first people I did.
You thought it would just devastate her?
I thought that she would then think of me differently, and that
you disappoint them or something.
Yeah, disappoint her. And she, from the second I told her, just was like, you know, Robbie, I love you so much. This doesn't mean anything. You know, I just want to support you. So, like, what's the next step? How can I help you? And my mom was at church. She speaks at Mass. She goes to church every day. So that was, you know, a huge concern of mine. But eventually, when I moved back here from London, I remember, like, she was talking to me about, like, marriage and, like, marriage equality stuff, and then everything just passed in the Supreme Court and in California. And I was speaking to her, like, how do you feel about that kind of stuff? And she's like, oh, I can't wait to go to your wedding. And when I was younger, you know, I would hear her speak about same-sex marriage, just like how awful it was. And so it took an experience like that was so personal, and her son to come out, to kind of just like, it was like overnight she changed, but to have an open mind and to, which I think is rare for somebody. I think sometimes people get to, you know, she's older now and 60 years old, and I think sometimes people get to that point and are kind of set in their ways. But she, you know, adapted and had an open mind and loved me and has been very supportive.
I think it's because I'm a parent.
Yeah.
I think it's really intuitive.
Yeah.
Flesh and blood, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I have tons of friends, gay men, that don't speak to their families. And I receive letters from kids all around the world every day that are abandoned by their families when they come out. Yeah. So, and it's 2015, you know, you can't get married in every state here in the United States. Yeah. So I agree with you, and that's the experience that I had with my family. But sometimes it's good to get those reminders from those people, because you realize, like, okay, well, I'm happy that I'm able to have a public platform where I can help people and play a sport that I love, but also be a role model for people that I didn't have, and the people that are abandoned by their families or that aren't loved by, you know, people close to them, that they at least can kind of see what I'm doing, so they can have a role model to, I don't know, not exactly structure their life after, but at least see what I did right and what I did wrong.
Well, you're right back to empathy, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's something I think I learned from my mom from a very young age. So,
you wrote this new book, or talk to us about the project. Who'd you write it for, and what's it about?
So I wrote the book with Penguin, Coming Out to Play, with Eric Marcus, and I did it mainly because of the response I had from people after I posted my letter publicly. So that was about 4 months after I came out to my family. I posted a letter while I was living in England, just to social media. I think I titled it, like, getting some shit off my chest, or something like that.
You tweeted out or something?
Yeah, I tweeted out or put it on my blog that was connected to my face. I don't know, something like that. Closed my laptop, like, turned off my phone, and I didn't know what the response was going to be. I thought, you know, there'd be some articles written, but I didn't think, you know, I was ready to go back to London College of Fashion. I was done with soccer. I thought, you know, okay, that's it. But it was letters I received and emails and phone calls from, you know, thousands and thousands of people around the world that really inspired me. Like, okay, it would be pretty amazing if I could go into more detail and kind of tell the whole story. And also, like, what a great learning experience to learn how to write a book and to work with a writer and with the agent and with the publishing house, and then do, you know, a PR plan, and then to have to do the book tour. And there were so many things that really excited me about the book. Yeah. So
well, books are amazing, right? They can get under your skin, and it's something you can give to someone, and they can hold, they can download on a device. But, you know, it's like that whole crowd. You know, some people are watching the action, other people like to read it, and it can really make change.
Yeah, and it was very therapeutic for me to write. You know, I had to go through all those experiences that I had when I was younger, and to bring those all up. And Eric came and stayed with me for a few months, and we just would write. And then when it was done, when you work on something so much, you become so passionate about it, you become you think it's great, of course, you know, and you send it to the editors, and they make notes, and everyone makes notes, and people close to you read it, and everyone's, oh, this is great, read it. But then once you finally publish it, and you have your audience is there to read it, and you get that reaction, that's when, you know, you really learn if it touches people, and if it is going to help people. And so I wrote it not just for gay men and women, and not just for athletes, but I wanted to be able to reach people in middle America that maybe had were a bit homophobic, or had someone in their family that was gay, that
just uneducated about the whole
thing. Just people that were maybe a little bit ignorant, and I think it has. I think it has a larger appeal than just a sports community or just a gay community. And, you know, I've heard from people from all around the world, actually, that have picked up the book and have said to me, like, Robbie, I felt like you were writing my story. Like, I realize it's yours, but, like, there's so much in the book that I connected to. So that was, you know, that was our goal for Eric and I, and we're really happy with the way it's turned out. And it's just the beginning, I think. You know, it's only been 2 months.
So you had phenomenal success, but talk a little bit about some of your failures, some of the rejection, and talk about it, I guess, from hindsight, because everyone wants to know the secret sauce. You know, what should I do to avoid the pain and the frustration, and how do you deal with rejection and all that?
Yeah, and when you mentioned that to me earlier, I don't think there's a special sauce for everyone. I think it's so different for everybody. For me, definitely from my failures, or
what have you failed at?
I didn't make the Olympic qualifying team was like the first huge failure, or at least I felt like it was a failure. So that was tough, you know, and I took it more, I motivated myself. So I didn't make the Olympic qualifying team. Coach obviously told me, and that next season I was an all-star, I was best 11, and we won the championship in Columbus. And it really just motivated me to, like, prove people wrong. Yeah. And on a smaller scale, when, let's say, at the beginning of a game I lose a ball, or I get a tackle, or there's a foul, or my coach starts yelling at me, you'll usually see, and my coach knows this because I know he uses it with me a lot, I'll have a great game after that, or I'll be much more aggressive, or I'll make sure, or, you know, so there's little things like that, or I'll watch a video, you know, of a game, and I'll see my mistakes. And the next game, it's like I improve that way. So to be able to notice, I think that's the skill to have, is to realize when you've failed, but not to take it as a failure, but to learn from it and as a learning experience. That's when I've improved the most from it. So even when doing stuff for the book tour and seeing like friends sending me interviews that I've done and being like, oh, that doesn't make sense, why did I say that? And then do the next interview and trying to at least, because you get that chance to reach out to people and to send a message, so it's important. So I would take that interview, see what I did right and wrong, and go to the next one and improve on that. So that's in all aspects of my life, sports or with the book, with writing, with the show stuff, with working with writers, and then realizing like I wish I would have been more of a voice with these writers so that the notes could have been implemented in a different way. So yeah, I think also I don't ever regret anything. So when I didn't make the World Cup team and I got cut, I was an alternate and I got cut in the last cut. I just realized the work that I put in and the process that it took me to get there and how proud I was of myself. I remember we put in, I think it was Czech Republic or Croatia the day before I got cut, and I had a really great game, and I still got cut. And so there's some stuff you can't do, but it still motivated me the next season and the season after that, and now when I get back to the national team. So I remember those failures, I guess if you want to call them, and I learn from them and they motivate me. But I think it's different for everyone. It's tough to kind of create a special sauce like you said.
We've been spending a few minutes with professional athlete and author Robbie Rogers. Robbie, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.